I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is June 1st, 2021. The Portland Board of Education is meeting virtually via Zoom. And may I ask the superintendent to please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo.
Présente.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Irish. Senor Rodriguez.
Presente.
Ms. Russell-Better.
Here.
Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Here.
Mr. Youssef.
Here.
Ms. Allen. Ms. Boxer-McCumber. Ms. Chung.
Here.
Ms. Hill. Ms. Yangala.
Yes, I'm here.
And Chair Figdor.
Here. Thank you so much. I did want to note that Mr. Irish is unable to join us tonight, and he apologizes, but he is out of town. And in addition, Ms. Hill is also unable to join us tonight. So with that, we are going to move to the pledge. Would everyone please unmute yourselves? And once we see the flag on the screen, let's please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
The flag
to the flag of the United States
of America. And to the republic
for
which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
visible,
with liberty and
and
justice
justice for all.
for all. All right, board, we're still working on that. Some weeks are better than others. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda tonight is that we are going to hear public comment. And specifically, I should say, on items not on tonight's agenda. So if there's anyone who's attending the meeting who would like to address the board, please use the raise your hand feature provided by Zoom. You can find it either on the bottom of the webinar panel or next to your name. And is there any public comment tonight? Again, this is on items not on our agenda. For items on our agenda, there will be opportunities as we go for public comment. All right, I do not see any hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And I just want to make sure that I'm giving people adequate time. So with that, we're going to move to the report of the chair. And tonight I have three things. So first, I wanted to invite the board and the superintendent's cabinet to an in-person end of the school year gathering outdoors at my house on Sunday, June 13th from 4 to 7 p.m. This is an opportunity to put our work together aside, to be in person together, some of us for the very first time ever, and to mark the end of a most challenging year, but also one in which we got a tremendous amount done while also keeping our students and staff safe. From crafting a historic equity budget that Portland voters will vote on next Tuesday, and some are voting early on now, to overhauling our sexual harassment and discrimination and discipline policies, to being on the cusp of breaking ground on the renovation of our three most rundown elementary schools just in the coming weeks. So I invite all of you. I do want to warn you ahead of time that will be largely my driveway and on my deck, as that's my outdoor space. But I'll try and make my driveway look as festive and welcoming as I can. And I promise lots of food and drinks. I love to cook. So hopefully you'll find food you like. Second, I want to mark and celebrate the start of Pride Month. This pride holds particular salience for me personally because it's the first in which I've been out publicly as gay. You can bet I'm going to be celebrating with my girlfriend and community, but more to the point, I want to celebrate all of our LGBTQ plus students, staff, and families. I'm so proud of your courage to be yourself and to assert your own humanity. I can't wait to march together in Pride next year. Thank you to all of our LGBTQ students, staff, and families for being your true selves. Lastly, I want to address the hateful and illegal yard signs that went up across the city this weekend opposing the school budget. I've never seen an organized effort to defeat our budget, the Portland school budget, and certainly not one that parrots Donald Trump's racist propaganda and hate. It saddens me to see Trump's culture war come to Portland's doorstep. But it only makes me, and I believe the full school board, more pass our historic equity budget on June 8th. We can no longer stand by as a city and allow kids of color, kids with disabilities, English language learners, and kids living in poverty to fall through the cracks. Portland is a city that values public education, and now more than ever, we need to come together to insist that kids marginalized by society get a quality education. This budget will help enable all kids to thrive. I encourage people to get out and vote, yes, to pass the school budget. Early voting is happening at City Hall at Merrill Auditorium, the Myrtle Street entrance tomorrow, June 2nd, from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then also on Thursday, June 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. So again, tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and on Thursday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then Election Day, of course, is next Tuesday, June 8th, and polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So please go and vote. For all the school board members, please help encourage your community to vote. And for all others, please also make sure your friends and loved ones are going out to vote too, so we can pass this historic equity budget together. And that is it for my comments tonight. And we do not have a report of the students, so we're moving right to the report of the superintendent. So Superintendent Batana, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Portland Public Schools recognizes the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Wolastoqey, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes known collectively as the Wabanaki Confederacy or People of the Dawnland. We're honored to have Wabanaki children among our students today, and as a district, we're committed to making the past, present, and future of Wabanaki peoples visible in our schools and classrooms. As Chair Figdor indicated, today, the first day of June, we kick off Pride Month, a time to recognize and celebrate our students and staff who are LGBTQ. As a district, we are committed to ensuring that our schools are safe and welcoming to all gender expressions, identities, and sexual orientations. Later today, we will be getting an update on the Foundation for Portland Public Schools fundraising work for the quarter. Today, I would like to congratulate Didi Maombi as the latest Portland High School student chosen to receive the Step Up Award, now in its 4th year. The Step Up Award at Portland High School provides funding for students in the Make It Happen program who would otherwise have to forego school year extracurricular opportunities in order to work after high school and or on weekends. Didi, a rising junior at Portland High School, will receive $1,250 per semester until graduation for her last 2 years of high school. Didi is a remarkable young lady, and I know that she will take this opportunity to realize her full potential. As always, I'm grateful to the Foundation for its work to create these opportunities, and so very grateful to Ann and Bill Weber for their generosity and vision. This week is our long-awaited graduation week. Portland, Deering, and Casco Bay High School will hold in-person commencement ceremonies on June 2nd and 3rd for the approximately 500 graduating seniors in the class of 2021. The high school graduation ceremony schedule is as follows. The 147th Deering High School graduation is scheduled for Wednesday, so tomorrow, from 11 a.m. at Memorial Field, and that is our only outdoor graduation. The, get this, 200th Portland High School graduation is scheduled for Thursday, June 3rd at 11 a.m. at Merrill Auditorium. And on the same day, Casco Bay High School will celebrate its 13th graduation, also at Merrill Auditorium at 6 p.m. And even though it's not this week, I don't want to not mention that Portland Adult Education will hold its graduation ceremony on June 24th at 6 p.m. at Merrill Auditorium. Also this week, we expect to receive bids for the Reiki Elementary School renovations. That will be the second of the 3 projects slated for startup this summer. We're hopeful that we will have a winning bid within the allotted budget. If we don't, we will need to organize for the board and district advisory building committee to work with us on scope modifications to conform to the budget. Presumpscot, the final of the 3 school projects, was advertised last week and is slated for bids to come in later this month. All 3 schools are working hard to wind down the school year and pack and move in anticipation of what will be a busy summer construction season. I'm grateful to our school leaders for their flexibility and wisdom, and to our staff for their patience and resilience. The next couple of years are going to require a ton of both of those. But the end result is well worth it, as our colleagues at Lyseth can tell us. They are entering the final phase of construction, and we are now in the planning phase for a preview for school board members later this month and a formal grand reopening ceremony before school begins next September. And as you heard, a final reminder that the City of Portland's June 8th special municipal education for the community to vote on our FY22 school budget and on the City Charter Commission is next week. These votes offer an important opportunity to shape the future of our city, and I hope that everyone watching and listening will take the opportunity to vote. We are hoping that the Maine legislature will act on the governor's proposal to fund public education at the statutory 55% level for the first time in history. If that comes to pass, PPS stands to realize an increase of $6.2 million. The board first, and then the city council will have an opportunity to determine how those funds are used. And our goal is to complete that process well ahead of the mid-July deadline for having any reallocation that reduces local property taxes incorporated into next year's tax bills. Today's school reopening update continues our practice of bringing updates to the school board on developments in our school reopening plan. This will be, believe it or not, our last school reopening update for the 2021 school year, as school will be done when we meet next on June 15th. I'm going to start today by talking about the evolution of public health guidance and the implications for our schools as we head into the end of the year. Although COVID-19 restrictions have been relaxed in Maine and around the country, we plan to stay the course with most of our health and safety protocols for the rest of the school year, mostly because of the amount of training required just isn't practical in the couple of weeks of school that we have left. We came to this decision in concert with school leaders and teacher representatives. Here are some of the key highlights from our health and safety protocols through the end of the 2020-2021 school year. Students and staff must continue to wear masks on school premises, both indoors, where they're still required by the Maine DOE, and outdoors, regardless of vaccination status. We are maintaining our current physical distancing guidance for students and staff, both indoors and outdoors. We're also maintaining the 6-foot distance for staff and students when they are unmasked and eating or drinking indoors or outdoors. And of course, this is still consistent with the DOE and CDC guidance. We've also decided not to allow non-essential visitors, including family members, in our schools through the end of the school year, except for pre-K and K screening and for multilingual meet and greet sessions. As we look ahead to the summer and obviously for the fall, we will revisit all of these requirements in light of the evolving public health guidelines. One of the items that we will continue to evaluate is the use of state-sponsored pool testing alternative. Current guidance from public health is that participation in that program can be used to reduce physical distancing in schools. Specifically, if a district is using it and more than 30% of the students and staff are participating, the 3-foot physical distancing is waived for most situations. As many of you know, we evaluated pool testing earlier this year and determined that it was costly and complex to implement. The cost issue has been removed by the state adopting it, and we will continue to look at different implementation models and grade levels. Since the approval of vaccines for students 12 and older, we have been actively working with our partners to set up school-based clinics and communicate with students and families about their options. We're encouraged by the positive response to date and hope that we will continue to get more and more students and staff vaccinated to make sure that our return to school in the fall is as close to normal as possible. Our case counts have continued to decrease. To put this in context, we had fewer than 30 cases in the month of May compared to nearly 100 in January. But of course, I cannot stress enough how important it is for everyone to continue to enforce and abide by our health and safety measures, including self-assessing and not coming to work or school if showing symptoms, as well as to continue our masking and physical distancing requirements. We see the end of the tunnel. Let's continue our vigilance and commitment to keep each other safe. If we do that, we will be able to keep our students learning in person through the next couple of weeks as we wind down the school year. Also today, I wanted to provide an update on our summer school work. At our May 4th meeting, we presented in depth about the status of our summer school plans. At the time, some of our plans were just beginning to take shape, and today we'd like to update you on the work that has been done to get us closer to kicking off what we expect to be the most robust and meaningful summer programming in the history of the Portland Public Schools. As everyone knows, the pandemic has had a profound impact on the educational opportunities available to all of our students. We are looking at summer school as a way to begin to make up for some of those lost opportunities. We're excited to have the resources available to make them available to students and families. We're still in the midst of operationalizing the plans that we discussed last month, so my update is going to bring you up to speed in where we are, but it's going to be fairly broad today, and you will hear as I present that some of these numbers are getting tightened, some as soon as by the end of the week. As you know, we have 3 different types of programs: school-based programs, district programs, and partner-run programs. My goal for today's update is to preview where we are with each of those categories in terms of communication and enrollment progress. I would like to start with our staffing status because that is an area where we highlighted some of the challenges that we were facing. I'm proud to announce that for all of our school-based elementary programs, staff has been identified and we expect will be fully hired by the end of this week. At the secondary level, most staff has been identified. Our school-based programs are 90% of the way there. And again, we expect to be fully staffed in those programs by the end of the week. In terms of district programs, we are fully staffed for the Language Academy, for our affinity groups, and most of our credit recovery and special education extended school year programs. We're still seeking staff to work in our elementary district programs, such as Bridge and Beach, and we're still identifying contracted providers for our speech, OT, and occupational therapy and physical therapy programs. All in all, this is remarkable progress, as you can see, since we were originally concerned about our ability to staff up to the level of programming that we were seeking. Altogether, we have hired 250 people for our summer programs. That so many Portland teachers, social workers, coaches, ed techs, and more wanted to support students in the summer is remarkable. It's a remarkable testament to the commitment and the dedication of our staff. I would like to commend our entire team, particularly Barb Stoddard, our Executive Director for Human Resources, for the creativity in working with our labor leaders to come up with ways to incentivize and provide the flexibility that would make this attractive, given the hardships that all of our staff face this year. We're still working on recruiting additional transportation staff. We have enough staff to run our day-to-day programming, but we would like to be able to increase the number of school year only staff or external drivers willing to work this summer so that we can also meet some of our district community partner needs with a minimal use of contracted bus routes, which tend to be extremely expensive. Regarding our programming, as I indicated at the beginning of my update, we're still very much in the middle of operationalizing enrollment. For both school and district programs, letters have gone out and we are actively in the enrollment process. Our elementary school-based programs range from a high of approximately 80% enrolled to about 25% enrolled. I know our principals and school staff are actively following up with families to get students enrolled for the summer. Our elementary school-based programs are scheduled to run from June 28th to July 29th, so for 5 weeks for 4 hours per day, Monday through Thursday. At the middle school, enrollment is lagging behind the elementary schools. As of Friday, only about 15% of our Sun School slots are filled, and I don't have an enrollment update for the school-based programming at the middle school or at the high school level, but we expect to have that by the end of the week. Sun School is scheduled to run from June 17th through June 25th. School-based programming is running for slightly different durations and timing at each of our high schools from late June or early July through the end of July. For district-based programming, materials again were sent out to families, and we are in the process of enrolling students and following up with those who have not responded. We will have a stronger sense of the numbers by the end of this week for Language Academy and by June 12th for our high school credit recovery district program. Dates for the Language Academy are July 6th through July 29th, and credit recovery is from July 6th through July 28th. As you know, our special education programming is extended year as part of the students' IEPs, and we expect that everyone who is eligible will be enrolled. I also want to point out that we have nearly 80 student internships available and have received enough applications to fill more than half of them already. And finally, we have an additional 41 Teach Portland applications to work in our summer Teach Portland program. So still lots of moving parts, but I want to take a moment to thank our district staff, especially Molly Myers, for juggling all of the tennis balls in our 3-ring circus, and Gail Cressy for all of the amazing budget, organizing, and convening work. This is a gargantuan task, and they do it with remarkable grace and patience. Finally, we have identified over 600 slots in community-based programming for students this summer. These programs are designed to provide our students, specifically those whose families qualify for free and reduced lunch, access to the wealth of summer camp experiences that are always available to students with means and the knowledge to access them. About 2/3 of the slots are directly in Portland, and 1/3 are in regional locations. Information about these opportunities went out last week, and Grace Valenzuela reported that over 150 of them were taken within the first day. So we're excited to see these opportunities get picked up by our students, since it affirms our theory of action around increasing equity of access to enrichment opportunities for students. Here, I would like to recognize Grace Valenzuela for her work in reaching out to and connecting with all of these amazing institutions that include our museums, the city, Boys and Girls Club, and YMCA, and a myriad of other partners and programs. I also want to shout out Connect Ed, our collective action education partnership here in Portland. Connect Ed started an out-of-school time provider network a couple of years ago for the purpose of having a regular convening to develop relationships and understand programming needs and capacity. This network has been invaluable to us as we've done this work back in the fall and again now. So thanks are in order to the Connect Ed staff, particularly Matt Dubel, and the partners led by Barrett Tarkisian at Portland Squash for their partnership and their vision. So that actually concludes my report, but of course I would be happy to take any questions that the board has about the school reopening report or summer school.
Does the board have any questions at this time? I see Ms. Bondo. Go ahead, Ms. Bondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. This is amazing. This is a great start for the summer program. So I have just two clarifications for the programming. On the enrollment form, then you just mentioned, and we send the form to families. So I just want to know, how did we send those form? Did we send via emails or because I know some of the families, they don't have any email. So how did we send those enrollment forms?
Grace, I see you're unmuted. Are you gonna?
Yeah, they were sent both as text messages and email.
Okay, so we have them respond also by just say yes, or they have to fill up the form. If you've been sending by text messages, so are they getting reply back to you?
Yes, they can. Text message.
They can. Okay. So my other sub question is that I know, do we have a different categories of students who've been already identified from the school? I mean, when the student, we know this is the category, they should come immediately to the program. Do we have those kind of categories?
Yes, the school-based programs that I described, those are students that the schools themselves targeted and connected with. And the same is true for many of our district programs. So obviously for extended school year and special education, for the language academy, for the credit. I'm not 100% sure about credit recovery, Malia, if that's all targeted or if that's also just available to anybody who wants to enroll.
Targeted.
Okay. It's been target?
Yes, that's targeted.
Oh, okay. Right. So, and can we know later on how many percentage on those target students we have for the?
Yeah. So you know, as I mentioned, we are still in the process of getting those enrollments. You know, I reported on some high-level numbers, but we will have tighter numbers later, and obviously provide an update on all of that to the board.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Madam.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Bondo, Ms. Figdor, before we move on from Ms. Bondo's questions, I wanted to make sure to clarify. Grace, just to make sure we're clear, was your response to Mickey that people can register for summer school by just replying yes to a text? Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, that's not what I meant. Yes, they can register, but they have to open the doc in the text.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that was clear, that if they get the text, it will link, and there are translated versions of the registration form, but I just want to make sure that that wasn't a misunderstanding, that people could just reply in text and be considered registered. So sorry, I just want to make sure that was clear before moving on.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was initially just going to ask about the timeline of when you would have final numbers, and just to send it to the board, which I think you implied that was what you were going to do, and you said hopefully either by the end of the week or soon after. It'd be great to have both the numbers of the students that were identified and then the ones that responded and are enrolled, just to get a perspective of how many we're unable to actually capture. And as I said when we had the other presentation, as with any other group of or rather any other data that we receive, it could be desegregated for us to review, and broken down by race and economic status. And then I just wanted to take a moment also to acknowledge the incredible lift that the HR department pulled off. I went, as the superintendent was about to announce that we were able to fill all the positions that we're concerned about. I went and looked for my notes because I remember noting down a big number, and I think it was 225 positions altogether. And then last time on the last update, there were about 30 that we were concerned about. So it's just an immense lift. So just a big shout out to Barb and her team. And yeah, it's amazing. And as the superintendent said in his opening remarks, a historic summer offering or summer programming offering for public schools, unlike never before. So it's incredible to see us leverage this opportunity the way that we're doing it. Did we say 600 slots with community partners? That's massive. Again, we're talking about some numbers and some figures that are just impressive. And I certainly hope that we can leverage every other aspect and every other resource possible to get as many students enrolled and accessing the opportunity. So thank you for the presentation. And again, thank you for the HR department for the amazing work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. Ms. Russell-Better.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, just echo the excitement about summer programming. Incredible. I just had a clarifying question, Superintendent, and I know there was a communication about this, so I apologize if I couldn't find it right now when I was peeking. So would you just clarify about the process for the for those slots for the summer programming? Is that through school social workers? Is that kind of how those are accessed, or is it?
I can speak to that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so we sent out a brochure that describes the programs and the dates and who, the age ranges that they're for, as well as a Google form for families to indicate if they're interested in which order of preference they have.
Yep.
And we've hired a summer coordinator for the community partner programs, Nicole Bradeen.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's making those matches. She's identifying if somebody said, I want this camp and the camp still has the seats, she makes the match and helps them understand how to get registered, make sure the community partner knows who's coming in from the district through this partnership we have with them. So there's a system, but it's also going to be pretty hands-on. And I think already we're going to be learning a ton about how to pull this off in this summer, in hopes that we'll learn from that and be able to apply for next summer as well.
Okay, thank you. So there was a flyer and then email communication. Is that right? Those are the two ways that families have been informed about the opportunity.
Yeah, Grace, I don't know if there's anything else.
I think I saw email.
So the website and anything else.
Okay.
There were two. One is a form, and then one is the brochure that lists the summer offerings for community partners, and they all came in one email.
Yes.
And text. And then we also put that in our other communication newsletter.
Yes. Okay. I was trying to remember where I saw it. So, okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Russell-Better. Mr. Youssef.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Superintendent, what is the percentage of special education students that are enrolled? And the second part is more education. I'm learning more. So are all special education students required to have summer schools?
Malia, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not sure I understand the percentage of students invited to the summer who are who have IEPs. Is that what you're asking?
Oh, who had already enrolled in the
I see. We don't have the data disaggregated today. We're just at the initial stages of enrollment, so we can follow up once we have that. And then in terms of your second question, not all students on their IEPs indicate that they need what we call ESY, the extended school year. So that's specific within an individual student's IEP plan. And one of the things we're trying to do better this year is to coordinate across programs so that if a student has ESY indicated on their IEP, they might go into the special ed ESY program, but we're also looking to think, oh, would they actually be better suited for the school's program? And so we're looking for those opportunities and making kind of judgment calls on a student by student basis to try to get them in the program that will best meet their needs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef. Any other questions from the board? I just want to also acknowledge the just tremendous lift and in an otherwise insanely busy time, and thank Barb and Molly and Grace and I know so many others for this tremendous effort, especially at this time coming as we continue to come out of the COVID crisis. This is going to make a difference for so many kids this summer. And Gail, I know so many who I didn't mention, but thank you to all. Mr. Superintendent, anything else to close out your report?
Nope, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we're going to move to the report of the Secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes from our May 18th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Mr. Youssef. Are there any questions on the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? So this is on specifically our meeting minutes from our last meeting of May 18th. Don't see any public comment, so I'm going to move to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the meeting minutes? Don't see any board discussion, so let's go ahead with a vote. By roll call, please indicate whether you're in favor of approving the meeting minutes of May 18th, 2021. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Chung?
Yes.
Ms. Yangala?
Yes.
And Chair Figdor?
Yes. So the motion passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. And now we are on to consent items. And tonight we have the quarterly report from the Fund for Portland Public Schools. And Mr. Superintendent, do you want to start us off with that?
I will just turn it over to Andy Weissman-Summers, the Executive Director of the Foundation, to provide the quarterly report on the Foundation's fundraising. We did not have any contributions to report today, so that's why we're diving directly into Andy's report. So Andy?
Super. Thank you, Chair Figdor and Superintendent Botana. I'm going to share my screen. I think I can do that briefly. I have just a few slides. I'm assuming that folks can see those. Great. So as now, I believe this is my fourth quarterly report to the board. And just a couple of quick updates on what the foundation is doing. We are now at the end of our first 3-year strategic plan, and our board, as well as our advisory board and some other stakeholders, have been working on a new 3-year strategic plan. Those of you on the board may realize that I did have one-on-one conversations with almost every Portland Public School board member, and the notes I took in those conversations were part of the data we used for theming of that strategic plan. So it's not completed yet, but we are developing our focus work onto 3 primary goals. One is increasing communications from the foundation. The other is capacity in terms of just kind of building our footprint, continuing to professionalize the organization and grow. And then finally, an expansion or exploration of our role. So along those lines, we are also updating our mission statement, and that is in the works now. And you will hear from me with what that is prior to our next update, and even prior to the annual report. We'll be sending an email out to our full next month. And so another thing we traditionally do at our quarterly report is share out any major donors that we've had since our last quarterly report. So this is the list of donors who have given over private and public foundation and corporate donations in the last 3 months that are over $1,000. I'm not going to read those to you, but they're there and they're in the board docs if you want to take a closer look. And then I do always like to point out that that most of our donors are not major donors. Most of our donors are the people in our community and the businesses who give $10, $50, $100, and that makes a tremendous difference for us. In the last 3 months, we've received 94 smaller donations, totaling $9,060. We have a month left in our fiscal year, and so that means so far this year we have raised $845,902 as of about 2 days ago. So the graph there on the bottom shows our revenue over the last 6 years actually, excuse me. And you can see we're on a steady trajectory for us being able to support the district financially more and more, which is wonderful. And we do have a final appeal out as well as 16 grants pending. So I'm sure we'll raise a little more as this year goes on. And then just to give you a sense of where that money is going, this somewhat messy graph is where the funds we've raised have gone so far this year. So you can see our biggest categories are what we call the coronavirus response. And the major piece of that was an anonymous donor we spoke about probably 8 or 9 months ago in this group, who donated to help support the multilingual, multicultural health outreach around the coronavirus. The Families in Crisis Fund has been tremendous. That is our emergency rent, utility, medical support that is run with through the social workers and the parent community outreach specialists from Multilingual. Addressing the Opportunity Gap is our equity campaign, and then the range of everything else. And so that, and I'm going to stop sharing, is the long and short of it. But I guess, are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Andy. Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Bondo.
Sorry, I have many questions, but I don't have a lot this time. I think I will have some follow-up question to Andy later on. So just on the grant pending, do you know so far if you have something that we can get some granted already? Is 16 grand still pending? Do we have some hope then,
Yeah, there are quite a few grants that we're going to be hearing about in June, and several of them are for STEM-related initiatives that I've been working with Brooke Teller and Jesse Robinson around building, about materials and class school-wide sets of books around the new elementary science curriculum that's meant to embed literacy across science. It's very place-based and hands-on. So if, we have, I think, $80,000 or $90,000 worth of requests out for that work, hoping that one or two of those will come through. Quite a bit of work around, deepening and accelerating the equity work in the district. And then we're always looking for additional funds for that families in crisis work, because we have been distributing about $8,000 a month to Portland Public Schools families. So that takes a continual source of income if we're going to keep that up.
So are we just navigating the grants on the state level, or are we going to the national or?
Yeah, so the foundation doesn't do state or federal governmental grants, but we seek funding from private individuals, local businesses, state and local foundations, and quite a few national foundations. And so I do research. I receive emails, and I have access to directories of national foundations, and I'm doing that kind of constantly.
One on the fundraising, what kind of tools are we using? We doing some appeal letter? Are we sending letters? So how do you advertise for the fundraising?
Yeah, that's it. It's a work in progress. And as we are continuing to grow, we're trying to expand and figure out new ways to do that. So we do send emails. Our board has decided we only do appeals by email 3 or 4 times a year. We send 2 or 3 kind of written appeals to our whole mailing list each year, but we're trying to be creative in that. So we just had a focus group actually just last week, and I'm sure someone here was on it, but forgive me for not remembering. Oh yeah, Barrett Wilkinson, who I think was here. But we're looking to think about creative ways to reach a broader audience within Portland, around the business community and families and individuals who haven't given before. And we feel like that way needs to be beyond emails and letters and social media, that we need, kind of a more nuanced campaign, whether it's through churches or word of mouth, kind of a sphere of influence model. We've even been talking about canvassing, like having door-to-door conversations or a living room conversation with families from each school community around some of the work that's happening. But we're also only 2 staff and a volunteer board. So we're doing as much as we can. And if you have specific ideas, I would love to discuss them online, and I'm always open to them.
Yes, definitely. I'm glad to help to go a little more further.
I would love that. Thank you.
Creating more tools to pray, because people need to be educated about the amazing work the foundation is doing. So we just need to make sure that we have a better advertising system working there. Okay.
I agree. Yeah. And that is one of the 3 pillars of our new strategic plan, is to kind of increase our communications. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Bondo, thank you for the very good questions. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank very much, Andy, that you've come in and you've really hit the ground running. And I remember, I know I've said this every time we talk about this, but when we started in the infancy stage of this and hoping it would make, a little bit of money, and, Kate came in, and then now you and you guys have blown it out. So I greatly appreciate that. I had 2 questions for you. Actually, a comment and a question. Can you go back to the slide on the 1,000+ donations? I just had a question about that.
Oops, except that I think hang on just a minute. Let me.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I closed the window and now.
Right, don't worry about it. I guess my question, when I was looking at that, there were some rather large donations, and one being from a religious group. And my question is, does that come with any kind of strings or contingencies upon anything the district does, curriculum-wise or otherwise? Because we've always been very, very careful about committing to any particular requests in that way. So I wanted to know if there was any strings attached to that money that came.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. There are not, which is wonderful. It's a restricted gift in that, so it was $23,000 in change from East Point Christian Church, which is known as The Point in South Portland. It's a very large church. That was 1/4 of their Easter collection that came to us, which is a remarkably generous donation. And they reached out initially to Susan Wiggin as the McKinney-Vento liaison to the district, and that they wanted to specifically benefit students and families who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. And Susan told them about the Families in Crisis Fund, and they said they thought that was a great match. So that fund is restricted for us to use for families in crisis, but that's the only restriction.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yep. No,
and
absolutely.
I really am excited, and I know I've been out of the country and you and I have missed each other, but I'm looking forward to working with you and kicking off the alumni portion of the fundraising and seeing where that can go, because I think that would be, just absolutely awesome. So I look forward to working with you on that. So thank you again very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Thompson, for pointing that out and for the clarification. Andy. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy, thank you for the presentation. As always, really impressive work that the foundation is doing. I want to thank you, as you mentioned when you started speaking tonight, that when you came on board, you went out of your way to reach out to board members, and the feedback that you received, and I remember you relaying this to me, was that you wanted the foundation's work to be closely aligned to what the Portland Promise and what the school board had identified as our priorities. And we're seeing this in the funds that are being developed, and the way that's particularly, over the last year in the pandemic, the way that you guys just pivoted into high gear. So really impressive work. The one question, and I've asked a similar question in the past about unrestricted funds. I guess I wanted to just ask, is there a way, or is there an interest in trying to get some of the bigger donors to make donations to the unrestricted fund, as opposed to trying to appeal them into specific funds? I don't know that there is benefit to even that. I'm just wondering, as you know, I always ask about the unrestricted funds.
Yeah, it's a nuance that I'm still sorting out, to be completely honest. The one new area that's happening that way is that every year the Portland Kids Duathlon is an external event fundraiser for the foundation. It's put on by Benchmark Real Estate. They're amazing Portland Public School parents and a business in the community. And this year their donations will be unrestricted to the foundation, which is exciting. So that is kind of one step in that direction that's happening this summer. It's on Sunday, July. It's either 25th or 26th, whatever the Sunday is. So I encourage you to register and volunteer. But yeah, so that's a piece of it. We also added on our donation website, you can donate to each of the different funds, and we added a section called Wherever It's Needed Most. And so that, those are unrestricted donations as well. And it actually really exceeded our expectations this year. I think we had budgeted to raise about $10,000 or $15,000 that way, and we raised about 45. So we're making some steps in that direction.
Great, thank you for that answer and the context. I'm glad to hear that exceeded your expectations. I find that often, and this is not just in making donations, but as people want to get engaged, they're like, anything that you have for me, I just want to get in, I just want to help. So I think it's good to have like that option, and clearly people are stepping up to it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. Andy, I had one question in addition to the other questions from the board, which is just looking ahead, when, clearly we're going to be dealing with COVID for a long time, but we're kind of coming out of the crisis, maybe, and then dealing more with the aftermath and continuing to grapple with the pandemic as it unfolds. We, clearly don't know all of the details about what that means. But how, when you look to the year ahead, to your next fiscal year, do you think you'll be able to maintain the level and possibly even grow the level of giving, or is there's such a big increase from last year, and I know it's, a testament to the tremendous work, but also I wonder if people were recognizing the great need during the pandemic. So I'm just interested in what you're thinking about the outlook moving forward.
Yeah, that's certainly something that I've thought about and talked about with our board extensively. We're cognizant that our our growth this year, in part is because we have Janine Bischoff on staff and we were able to have a second employee, and, that was our hope. But I do think that the pandemic was, like it was for many nonprofits that did crisis-related work like we did, that it was a very successful year. So I'm hopeful that the expanded reach of new donors we have will help us increase, and just the simple fact that it will be my second year doing the job, so I'll get to do anything for a second time versus the first time, will be helpful in being able to continue to be more successful and kind of fine-tuning some of what we've done. But I can't promise anything. It's, we're certainly trying, and we're working on our fiscal year 22 budget right now. It's not final as yet, but it is a growth budget, and we are, hoping to continue, if not at quite the same pace, a trajectory of growth next year. That's kind of all I can.
I love that it's a growth budget, and I think it should be, and just appreciate so much that you've accomplished this in your first year. It's quite extraordinary. So thank you so much for all of your work. It's extremely exciting. All right, with that, I think we are moving on to old business. So consideration and action to approve the superintendent to sign the Memorandum of Understanding from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2023 between the Portland Public Schools and the Foundation for Portland Public Schools. Is there a motion? Ms. Bondo, seconded by Mr. Burke. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. And I'm going to really let Andy carry the bulk of this, but what we are bringing to you is the renewal. This is the third renewal of the Memorandum of Understanding with the Foundation for Portland Public Schools. As the board knows, this is, these are 2-year renewals every time, and so we're looking forward to bringing this to you for your approval. There are no significant changes to the Memorandum of Understanding. The only thing that has changed is the date, and I believe that's it. So there's no change in the terms, and we're just thrilled, as you heard just now, and this was, perfect timing, that, the foundation has really done an amazing job for its entire life, but particularly in this last year, to really elevate the needs of the Portland Public Schools in our community and to be able to bring in the resources. So we're looking forward to continuing that work under Andy's leadership and with the amazing FPPS board. Andy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I don't. We didn't make a change. So as Superintendent Bertano said, we do have the name of our kind of presumed president-elect of the board as the signatory on that. We have not had the board election yet, but we do know that Josh Rent, who's our current board chair, is stepping down. And as of now, Sarah Morin is the only person who has stepped up. It's an uncontested race, but we're having that election in 3 weeks. So just to clarify that piece, her name is in there. And I would assume that we could amend it if for some reason she did not become the chair of our board.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there questions on the motion? Questions from the board? I see no questions from the board, so I'm going to go to public comment. Is there any public comment on the motion? This is specifically the MOU between the foundation and Portland Public Schools. Just some birds outside my window. All right, is there any board discussion? Okay, I don't see any discussion, so let's go ahead with the vote. By roll call, please indicate whether you are in favor of the superintendent approving the Memorandum of Understanding from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2023 between Portland Public Schools and the Foundation for Portland Public Schools. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better,
Yes.
Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Chung,
Yes.
Ms. Yangala,
Yes.
and Chair Flicker.
Yes. So the motion passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. And now we are on to new business. First, it's first read on the board equity policy. And there's no questions or comments on first read, but we will have a workshop on equity policy after the close of our business meeting. So next is first read, consideration and action to revise policy IKF, graduation requirements. And again, there are no comments or questions on first read, but we will get to it at our next meeting. So that is our agenda for tonight. So before we adjourn, as I just said, but want to remind everyone, we have a workshop after we end this meeting, and it's on our equity policy. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right. That was Ms. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. All in favor? We are adjourned at 8:09 p.m.